recap of what we've done so far, and then we will know how we're going to end off this chapter. First and foremost, we started off with the parts of the reproductive system, both plants as well as humans, right? After which, we went from parts to how they work. How do they work together? We did not spend a lot of time on how the reproductive parts of a plant work together, but we spent a lot of time on the human, right? For example, this was where we spoke about the menstrual cycle and ovarian cycle. After which, we also spoke about some sub-points of how they work together. We brought up things like fertilization, and we compared between plants and humans, right? Similarities and differences between the fertilization process. In our last lesson, we spoke a little bit about disruptions to fertilization. We learned that plants adopt various methods. For example, their flower structure may develop one after another, temporally. You may also find male and female flowers on separate plants. Various ways that plants disrupt or prevent self-fertilization. What about humans? Well, actually, we've learned a lot of it in JH2. For example, in humans, guys can get a vasectomy. Right? So we've learned these processes before in JH2, and that's why we're not spending time on it this year. That's why we spend more time on the plants aspect. To conclude today's lesson, we're going to talk about post-fertilization. What happens after fertilization? Actually, we went through a little bit already. Last week we had Fruity Friday. Because post-fertilization, for plants, you end up getting a fruit and seed. Right? Today, we're going to focus on a human version. You are nothing more than a grown-up seed from mom. Your mom was a fruit, therefore. Was mom a fruit? Is this the best analogy? Yeah, kind of. Okay, so today we're going to dive into the human version of it. What happens post-fertilization? And that's where we will end off the chapter. After which, we will start, I'm just going to introduce the new chapter on inheritance. Okay? Inheritance is like the second last chapter, almost there already. Right? The very last chapter is very short. It's called natural selection. Likely natural selection will finish within the first to second week of term 4. Right? So this is what we are left with, inheritance. Inheritance is really the discovery and learning of how you inherit things from your parents. Why do you look this way? How come your parents both have brown eyes, then you have blue eyes? Maybe something went wrong along the way. So that is the study of inheritance. We're going to find out how this happens. Okay, we'll start off this morning. We're going to watch a quick video on the development of baby. Just to let you know, we do not expect you to know the various stages of baby growth. Okay, just appreciate and understand what we do. We will not ask you to draw and annotate a developing baby. Okay, if you want to learn all this, you can study medicine next time. Instead, I'll just like you to understand the broad features of what keeps the baby alive inside mommy. We left off last time round on fertilization in humans, right? We learned that you require egg and you require sperm. And after the nuclei of both of them fuse together, you'll get what we call a zygote. Our story continues here. What happens after the zygote implants itself inside the uterine lining of mommy? What happens from here on? Okay, that is what we're going to watch, and I do not need you to know in depth what's happening. Instead, we want to understand after this how your mom kept you alive inside for 9 months.
This animation is brought to you by the Nucleus Medical Art Library, or NMAL, where you can download this animation and thousands of medical images and videos created by Nucleus Medical Media. To apply for a free 30-day trial, click on the link in the description.
Pregnancy is the time period during which the baby develops inside your uterus. It usually lasts about 40 weeks, starting from the first day of your last menstrual period. These 40 weeks are grouped into 3 segments called trimesters. The first trimester lasts about 13 weeks. During the first 2 weeks, you aren't actually pregnant because of the way your due date is calculated. But your body is preparing for pregnancy. During the second week, an egg is released from your ovary in a process called ovulation. Around the end of the second week, the baby is conceived in a process called conception or fertilization. This happens when a sperm from the father merges with the egg from the mother, usually in the fallopian tubes. During conception, genetic material from the mother and father combine to form a unique genetic code, instantly determining sex, hair color, eye color, and hundreds of other characteristics. This new single cell, called the zygote or embryo, is the beginning of a new human being. During the third week, the zygote divides to form a hollow ball of cells called a blastocyst. The cells of the blastocyst begin to arrange themselves into 2 groups. The inner group will develop into your baby, and the outer group will form tissues to nourish and protect it. During week 4, the blastocyst moves into the uterus, where it hatches out of its outer layer. Once freed from this outer layer, the blastocyst can embed itself in the thickened lining of the wall of the uterus in a process called implantation. Weeks 5 to 10 are referred to as the embryonic period. All of the major organs start to grow, such as the brain, spinal cord, and heart. The heart begins to beat during this period. Structures called the placenta and umbilical cord begin providing life support for the embryo. They bring nutrients and oxygen from the mother to the embryo. Bones and muscles start to grow beneath thin, transparent skin. Toward the end of the embryonic period, the embryo starts to look more human. At the end of week 10, the embryo is now called a fetus and is about 1 1/4 inches long from head to rump. During the next few weeks, the arms and legs grow longer and start to move. Fingers and toes finish developing, and the baby's face becomes well formed. By the end of the first trimester, your baby is almost 3 inches long. Your body experiences many changes during the first trimester. This is due to changing levels of chemicals, called hormones, circulating through your body. The most common first sign of pregnancy is that your menstrual periods have stopped. You may have other symptoms as well, such as nausea, often called morning sickness, that can occur at any time of day, tender swollen breasts, mood swings, constipation, weight loss or weight gain, craving or disliking certain foods, and feeling more tired than usual. You may have only a few of these symptoms or none at all.
childbirth? Okay, I have not personally watched real one before because I imagine I've heard that it is quite bloody. So we'll watch the animated version. Did your mom tell you whether you were born naturally or via C-section? Yeah? It's a bit awkward if you ask who here was born which way. I was born naturally. Here, this video, I'm going to show you how a baby eventually comes out of mommy.
During a vaginal childbirth, the first stage of labor lasts about 12 to 19 hours and starts when your baby settles lower into your pelvis. In response, your cervix begins to efface or become thinner and dilate or widen. During this time, you may feel strong, regular contractions occurring every 5 to 20 minutes and lower back pain and cramping that doesn't go away. You may see a brownish or reddish mucus discharge, which could be the mucus plug at the opening of your cervix falling out. Your water may break, which can either be a large gush of fluid or a continuous trickle. If you experience any of these symptoms, contact your doctor or midwife to see if you should go to the hospital. At the beginning of stage 2 of labor, which can last from a few minutes to 3 hours, your cervix is fully dilated to 10 centimeters. And your baby's head has moved beyond the cervical opening into your birth canal. During this stage, you will begin to push your baby out. You may instinctively push when you feel the urge, or you may need coaching from your doctor, midwife, or labor nurse as to when to push and when to rest. In a normal delivery, your baby's head will rotate to face your back. During active labor, your uterus is divided into an active segment that contracts, pushing the baby downward, and a flexible passive segment that remains relaxed, stretching to provide more room for the baby to pass through. In some cases, when the top of your baby's head appears or crowns, your doctor may make a small cut called an episiotomy to enlarge the vaginal opening. Then you will continue pushing your baby out. As your baby's head passes through the birth canal, it molds into an elongated shape. An elongated head shape will resolve itself within a few days as the skull bones shift back into place. After your baby's head exits the birth canal, his or her head and shoulders will rotate to help the shoulders pass through the birth canal. Your baby's shoulders are delivered one after the other in order to fit through your pelvis. Once the shoulders emerge, the rest of the baby slides out easily. After your baby is born, his or her umbilical cord will be cut. In stage 3 of labor, which may last 5 to 30 minutes, mild contractions will help push the placenta out of the uterus.
Sorry, I'm supposed to promote increase fertility in Singapore because our birth rate is very low. Yeah, there will be painkillers given. I think, actually I still have this clip, at home. So after I was born, they will put a clip, right, after they snip the umbilical cord. I still have that clip. Does not look very bloody. So I think earlier on when you were listening to the video, a few words will come into play. The first word that they will mention is this thing called placenta. Second word that you probably heard before, umbilical cord. Okay, I think I spelled cord wrongly. The umbilical cord. Did I spell cord? Oh, just C. Okay, the other cord is the musical cord. Okay, last something like a water bag, right? And then sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, my water bag burst. Okay, so what is that actually? We call that the amniotic sac. These three things keep baby alive or inside mommy. You have seen that just now baby was attached to mom via something like a pouch. So I'm going to draw what the placenta is now. The placenta looks like a little pouch. Later on we'll show you a video of a baby that was born and placenta still attached to the baby. Okay? This placenta you will often find an umbilical cord, and then this is where the human being is attached to. Yeah? But you may be wondering, why is baby attached to mom this way? It's very fascinating how baby is attached. Every month, a woman will go through the process of developing the uterine lining, thickens with a lot of blood vessels, yeah? But what for? Well, in the eventual event, or event where a baby forms and needs to implant itself to grab nutrients from mom. So think of it this way. Mom has a lot of blood vessels inside the uterine lining. Baby will also develop his own heart, which also comes with its own blood vessels that will reach into the placenta. And you do not need to know the details, but the idea here is that there will be diffusion taking place between mom and baby, between the blood vessels. So on one hand, nutrients from mom will be going inside the placenta, running through the umbilical cord to baby. Waste also will go out via this same cord. So that means there was a time in your life where you did not poop, did not eat through the mouth, did not shit through your yeah, instead everything happened through this one hole, which is quite amazing. And the scar tissue is still over there. But every time I poke my belly button, it feels very hot. You get a very funny feeling in the stomach. You can no longer do that through this hole. Yeah? You don't shit through here anymore or eat through here. But long ago, in that 9 months, nutrients went in and food waste went out. In fact, you also kind of breathe through that umbilical cord. Oxygen went in, carbon dioxide went out. Mom did everything else for you. So, one may be wondering, why doesn't baby's blood vessels just intertwine and connect with mom's blood vessels? Yeah, actually that will present itself a problem. During childbirth, how? If your blood vessels are intertwined with mom's, right, there will be a problem. So that's problem number one. But actually a bigger problem is this. Blood types, right? How many of you, your blood type is the same as your parents? Not always. And this is a little bit to do with inheritance later on that we'll start to learn. Blood types. Having a placenta helps to separate baby's blood from mom's blood. At the end of the day, diffusion is taking place across the blood vessels, but the blood vessels never directly touch each other. So it helps to separate the blood types, so that as you're developing, your blood will suddenly clot inside you. You've learned about agglutination, blood clots in JH3, right? Circulation system. Another reason, baby's heart is very small. Mom's heart is way bigger. This will present a problem. If mom's blood vessels are connected directly to baby's, one pump of mom's heart will burst baby's heart. Yeah? So blood pressure is another issue. And that's why there's no direct connection between the blood vessels, separated by the placenta, so that the blood pressure does not affect baby's blood pressure. That's why we really need the placenta. What about the umbilical cord? Well, think of the umbilical cord as the channel through which nutrients and waste are being transported in and out. That is literally your lifeline to mom. But last but not least, there's this thing called the amniotic sac that keeps baby cushioned and nestled within mom. It's a misconception to think that baby is just, kicking around the other parts of the uterus inside. Actually, it's surrounded by a very nice cushion of liquid. There was a period of time you didn't even breathe through your nose, use your lungs. Because that period of time, you actually envelope in a pouch. And this pouch is filled with lots and lots of water and fluids. And that helps to cushion you within mom. So you are like free floating, zero gravity, enjoying yourself in this small little space. But that time will slowly reduce as you grow bigger and bigger, then you have less space within mom. But it's very important. It helps cushion you within mom. Once in a while, mom may accidentally not look at her surroundings and be bumped into something. But hey, you're fine. Because the fluids here will absorb the shock and not you directly. And so, usually a sign that mom's about to give birth is when the water bag bursts or the amniotic sac. Then there'll be a gush of a lot of fluids coming out. Right? That's usually the first sign that baby's about to come out. Because this cushioning is no longer there. This story, that time in the army, I don't know if I've said it before. I had a fellow soldier, and he was telling us that his wife is pregnant and has been pregnant for very long already. Any time could give birth. And the funny thing was that in the army, all of us carry a little pouch behind our backs called a water bag. And we'll connect to the front and then we'll drink water from. Right? Then we were marching in the forest. Then all of a sudden he said, "Oh my God, my water bag burst!" Hey, he didn't say my water bag burst. He just started screaming, "Water bag burst, water bag burst!" Then we were like, then we all rushed to him. Then we gave him our pipe like, "Need water, need water." And then they said, "No, my wife's water bag burst." Then after that, he rushed out the forest. Next thing we knew, he shot us photos, and then new baby was born. Have to lah. So he was allowed to hold on to his phone, even though we're in the forest, because anytime his wife was going to give birth. Okay, so at least for you, just a brief understanding of the function of the placenta, umbilical cord, and amniotic sac will do. We will not ask you to describe in depth the functions. Likely it will be some sort of MCQ, and then a very brief idea of the function. Because there's actually a lot of functions. What do you think mom will give to baby through the bloodstream? What are some things you will require to keep baby alive? Okay, fair enough, right? Okay, so what kind of things will you expect to be transporting? Well, you will need oxygen. What else would baby need? You will need all sorts of the nutrients that you typically require, that mom eats. Baby will also receive lots of hormones. In fact, babies will also receive these things called antibodies. I think you learned before, immune system. Yeah? So that's what keeps the baby a little bit more resistant to diseases. Mom actually provides a lot of these kind of basic essentials. It's like the starting off kit that mom provides for you. When I saw this structure and anatomy of how a baby develops inside mom, one thing popped into my mind. What about twins? Okay, space is one thing. Okay, mom will just have to be a bit to like stretch out a bit more. But you wondered how twins will attach themselves within mom. Because there's, right, if you look at it this way. I also cannot remember, there are many configurations that twins can attach to mom. How do you, if you want, let's predict, right? I was thinking to myself how twins may attach to a parent. How do you think the twins will attach to a parent? Split into two? Perhaps two amniotic sacs within mouth, two placentas, or maybe the twins attach via two umbilical cords to one placenta. I cannot remember the configuration. So twins. So it would seem that at least for twins, there are various ways. Identical twins share the same placenta. Fraternal twins, fraternal means that two separate eggs are possible for them to have separate placentas. What do placentas look like? They look like this. They literally look like a plastic bag, but within the plastic bag, lots and lots of blood vessels from babies. I've heard that some countries, after give birth, the family will ask to keep the placenta. Then after that, they will consume the placenta to nourish the mom. Actually, in the wild, if you look at wildlife documentaries and watch them give birth to a baby's life, right? Actually, the first thing mom will do in the wild will be to eat up her own placenta. Get back the nutrients. There are instances where babies are born without the water bag bursting. Amniotic sac doesn't break. This is a very interesting example. So what you're about to watch, if you feel squeamish, you're about to see a baby that was born still within the amniotic sac. This image below that you're about to see, or actually you can see inside your SLS2, baby, umbilical cord with still the placenta attached. Actually, I've always wondered, if you never cut, right, they just let you run around, right? With the placenta Yeah, but in the wild, you will see that usually what will happen is that the mom will start to bite and gnaw away at the umbilical cord, gnaw away at the placenta, eat it up also. Then that will help remove the umbilical cord. Wow, this is worse for you. Okay? Alright, now that we have had quite a broad and simple look at how a baby develops within mom, we're going to end off with a quick comparison between this as well as when we look at the baby version in a plant. Are there similarities? Are there differences? Here, we show you a cross section of a developing fruit, right? This is the fruit, developing fruit from the ovary. Then we have the seed that's developing from the ovule. How is this similar or different compared to a human version? Okay. So a quick discussion. We have collect some points, and then that will be the end of this chapter. Just going to compare a little bit post-fertilization, how babies develop, the plant version as well as the human version. right? So a few minutes, I'm going to play some music. I'd like you to compare between this image as well as the baby version in a human, and then we'll have a quick comparison on the similarities and differences. One might want to think also about, where do the plant baby get nutrients from? Where does human baby get nutrients from? minute more for you to contribute your points, what you think are similar and different. Let's have a look at some of your points of comparison. First and foremost, Xiaoyang says that they both have placenta. Both have something that attaches the baby to the parent. Okay, let's have a look. Indeed, human baby, there's a placenta, and then it's attached by an umbilical cord. When we look at a plant, assuming that this is still connected to the main plant, okay, connected to the main plant of food, technically, yeah, the placenta is the point where it's still attached to, and then we have this particle, almost like an umbilical cord, but not quite, because it's not exactly supplying nutrients like in the case of a human baby. Emily says also that there's a placenta, and it attaches to the ovary wall. In the case of humans, this placenta attaches also to the part of the parent. As we look around, many have also brought up the point of placenta. Critics says that there is the presence of an embryo in both instances. Indeed, there are. That is the main thing that we're trying to keep alive also. Iman also mentioned about placenta and talking about tubes that connects to it. Right? Okay, Charlotte brought up something different. She said that the fetus and ovule is connected to the parent via the placenta. She mentioned now what is being connected to the parent. Quite different. In this case, in the case of a human, it's a fetus. But in the case of a plant, the ovule is the one connected to the placenta. Where exactly is the plant baby? The plant baby isn't the ovule. It isn't the seed. The plant baby is inside the seed. So where's the embryo? Is what I've drawn in orange. This is the plant embryo. Okay? This is the plant embryo. In a sense, if I really want to compare, it is almost like the seed is like an amniotic sac of some sort. Right? And then the plant baby is inside it. Okay, Gautami says both have placentas, provide developing ovule and baby with nutrients. Right? So again, what we are connected to is quite different. One is connected to the ovule, one is connected to the entire baby. Okay. In both plants and humans, both ovule and egg implant themselves into the lining of the ovary-uterine lining for nutrients. Okay. When we use the word implant, it implies that it was once free and then it implants itself inside. In the case of humans, that zygote did implant itself into the uterine lining. In the case of plants, they were all stuck there to begin with. Yeah? Okay, let's scroll down a little bit more to see if there are any interesting new points. Both result from fertilization. Yeah. If there's no fertilization taking place, you won't quite see the structures develop in its fullest. Both rely on their mothers for nutrients during development. Okay, but here's the interesting thing. For humans, the baby develops to its fullest size within mom. But when you look at plants, it doesn't quite happen. In fact, the baby plant doesn't quite grow. In fact, often you will get rid of the fruit itself. It will detach itself from the parent plant. This seed will then find its way into the soil or somewhere to grow. And therefore, what's interesting is that in the case of plants, you no longer have really a live connection to mom. But mom left the baby plant with enough nutrients to grow its way out. So, remember what we talked about over here? This is what we call the endosperm tissue. This developed from the double fertilization. Remember in plants, you fertilize one time to get a baby plant, fertilize a second time so that you can start to develop this nutritive tissue. And that's what mom leaves behind. It is really like the yolk sac of the plant. And the seed is nothing more like an egg of the plant. Okay, last but not least, Ryan says that they both receive nutrients. Yeah? Oh, both of them immobile during post-fertilization. That's quite an interesting point. It's not like baby wants to go out for a stroll and then after that come back in when they feel like it. Okay, so they are both kind of stuck in their place as they grow. What about some differences? I think lots of differences you'll see. So everyone says they are attached by different things. One is a funicle, one is an umbilical cord. I would say that's a matter of naming also. Okay, interesting. Amanda says fetuses surrounded by amniotic sac, but not quite for C. Yeah, that's true. Nothing quite much to cushion. Okay, and Amanda kind of brought up the point that we talked about earlier on. That in the case of human babies, they attach themselves. But for plants, they are pre-attached. Okay, Iman also brought up amniotic sacs. Well, okay, what is this? Plant growth is in ovaries, humans is in the uterus. Okay, that's a fair point. Human babies do not develop in the ovaries, fortunately. It will be very painful for the mom. Then you have to give birth through the fallopian tube first. That will be very painful. Oh, okay. Emily says that one difference is that you could have multiple ovules and placenta in the plant. And that's a fair point. One ovary can have many of them. One mom got some limit. Well, actually now I'm starting to wonder, how do those moms that have like quadruplets, right, manage to squeeze so many things in? Critic brought out what things develop into. He brought out that ovary develops in the fruits, ovules in the seeds. In the case of plants, if you want to compare before and after, actually we cannot compare the mom before and after, but we can compare the baby. Zygote will develop in blastocyst, then eventually into the baby. Okay, Brian brought up that the fetus has many blood vessels that are connected via the umbilical cord. But in the case of plants, we don't quite have all these blood vessels. Okay, and as I scroll around, I think largely the same points. Okay, Sujie put up that for plant embryo, they get nutrients from the endosperm tissue. Whereas for human, get nutrients through the umbilical cord from the mom via the placenta. Okay, so many points that we can compare and these differences that we see between plants and humans. Okay, with that, we've come to the end of this particular chapter of reproduction. Usually we teach the chapter separately. We go from plants first in its entirety, then humans. But this year we try to see things parallel to each other. So you can see that actually when you look at things developing from single cell to multicellular, there are similarities along the way and also large differences because we are plant or human. Okay, with that we come to the end of the chapter. I give you some time to jot down some notes if you like to consolidate as I stand by for the next chapter to begin. So if you are searching for notes on inheritance, it will come out by Monday. I'm doing an introduction to connect you to a chapter that you've done before, which is cell division, right? So that you have a little bit of a preview, and when we hit the chapter of inheritance, it's not too foreign to you. So think of this as a recap plus an introduction to the new chapter. Okay, if you like to take down notes for this introductory part, you can go to your notes on cell division and then go to the section, let me just find the notes. If you like to take down notes, or at least have something to refer to so that you draw this connection to the new chapter, you may go to meiosis notes, cell division. You may take down notes for this introduction over here. So there's a large blank space, or you can create a new blank space at the side of your OneNote. Okay, I say again, you could take down notes today for the introduction under cell division, meiosis notes. Okay, ready? Okay, this morning we will be starting on the second last chapter of your year, JH4 of your biology journey. We are ending off with these chapters because to understand what's happening in these chapters really requires all the knowledge you've gained from biology. It is also one of the foundations of biology. If you want to study biology in a future university, this is something that scientists spend a lot of time on because it helps us understand why every organism looks so unique, yet shares some characteristics with their parents. And that is the idea of inheritance. Today we're going to talk a little bit, give you a brief introduction to inheritance. How we inherit things from parents or traits from parents. You hear me use the word traits very often. When I use the word traits, I'm talking about the characteristics of you. Your hair color, your skin color, your eye color, your height, your weight, your size, lots of different traits. Your blood type is also a trait. How do we inherit these traits from our parents? That's why we call this chapter inheritance. And then, which begs the question, how do scientists find out about the laws of inheritance? How do they find out how organisms inherit one thing from parent and not another thing from a parent? Well, it started off a long time ago. To study inheritance would be very odd if we carry out studies through the use of humans, right? It would be very weird if I want to find out if a certain thing will be inherited. I get two people to mate each other, and after they get baby, then I'm like, oh, confirm that it indeed will be inherited. Very weird. So instead, a lot of studies that were done in the past were done on plants. Plants were proved a very effective way of studying how certain traits are inherited and why certain traits aren't inherited as clearly. So long time ago, if I bring you all the way back in time, there used to be a Hungarian monk. Austrian monk. His name was Gregor Mendel. You will hear his name very often once we move forward in this chapter. And if you don't know the name of this person, I would say you're not a biologist. His name is Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk. This monk, not only does he work inside not only is he highly religious, he also spends a lot of time farming. He was a person who was very avid and keen on learning science. And he studied science through the use of plants. He wanted to see how certain traits are inherited from one plant to another. And the plant that he worked with were peas. Peas. Here, I brought lots of peas. My mom was working in China for a while, so I got her to buy peas. Lots and lots of peas. I brought back 2 big bags of peas, and inside these 2 big bags, there are 2 different colors of peas. You may not be able to see the colors there obviously, but from a distance, can you tell that there are 2 colors? Yeah? This is yellow, this is green. I can assure you, before they were dried, they look very green and very yellow. Have you ever seen a yellow pea before in your life? Never. I tried for the life of me to find yellow peas in Singapore. Very hard to find. And so I asked my mom to buy from China. They are not. They are really a different color pea, but from the same species. So that means it's like, have you ever seen white pea flower? So we went to the bush, right, and you pluck blue pea flowers, right? There are variations, they can come in white also. Yeah? It's quite amazing if you find white ones. If you ever find white ones, please take photos at the class. It's very rare. But here, we have some yellow peas and green peas. I'd like to pass around some peas right now for you to see, so that you can see the difference yourself. Okay. But here, sorry, you will not be able to see the difference unless I put it in full. So I'm going to grab some cups. You can have a look at the difference in the colors. And I'll share with you why I'm showing you these peas in a while. Okay, so there you go. Yellow and green peas. Mendel himself was very fascinated by this. He was so intrigued by the fact that from his field of peas that he grew, sometimes he would see green, sometimes he would see yellow. But he wanted to make sense of how the yellow color and the green color were inherited between different generations of pea plants. So I will pass around, and then you can have a look at the 2 different colors. Here, I'd like to show you fresh versions, and they look quite beautiful. I don't think you've really seen yellow and green peas before. If after I show you this photo, it won't quite look familiar to you. Yes. Okay, it can look very, very yellow. If you are done with the peas, may I have them back? Thank you. Green and yellow. Okay, so let me continue the story. Now, Gregor Mendel wanted to investigate how in the world were pea colors inherited from one generation of pea plant to another. So he did the most natural thing that he can imagine himself doing. He took 1 green pea, he took 1 yellow pea, and then he planted it. Let them grow to adulthood. After they grew to adulthood, this was what he did. He took the pollen grain from one and took the sigma of another, and then he got them to cross-fertilize, right? After he got them to cross-fertilize, lots and lots and lots of pea pods started forming on both bushes. And then he opened up the pea pods and he extracted the peas out. What color do you think the peas turned out after he put the green pea plant and the yellow pea plant cross-fertilize each other? Green plus yellow is green. Okay, let's think. So, Mendel made some predictions of his own. What do you predict? Imagine how you really go back in time, at the beginning of time, right, where people don't know how things are inherited. Really, he was discovering on the go. He got green pea plant. And then he got it made with each other, okay, in a plant way. And he got offspring. What color do you think the offspring turned out? Okay, so let's make some predictions. What red? Okay, this one came out of nowhere. My years of teaching, I've not heard this color pop up. Okay, but sure, red. Any other colors? Okay, who says green? Okay, you say green, huh? Any other colors? Brown? Any other colors? Yellow? Okay, so Siche just came back. My question, the story went like that. Mendel took one green pea plant and one yellow pea plant and he got them to cross-fertilize. Then he collected all the offspring, all the peas at the end of the day. What color were all the peas? So, some say red, some say green, some say brown, some say yellow. Okay, the color. Any other colors? Any other colors? Light green, light yellow, dark yellow. Light green. Yeah. Hey, we just shout red or logic red? No. Oh, okay. Dr. what about you? How about brown? Okay. Perhaps. Okay. So now there's another. There's some logic to what Dr. is bringing up. Could it be brown? Could it be fusion between the two colors? Could it be? But wouldn't that be light green? When you put green and yellow, what will you get? Lighter green. Okay, let me just put down one more color. Light green. But the idea here, I think you are trying to bring up is that fusion of colors of sorts. So what actually happened? When he harvested all the peas, thousands and thousands of pea pods that he got from these two plants, he collected thousands of them. Okay, I'm going to fill up 4 cups worth of peas. All of them came out a nice shade of yellow. So, yellow, 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 and yellow. And he was quite stumped. Because he was thinking to himself, if I put green and yellow together, not all the offspring become yellow. So, does this surprise you? It is as though the green color disappeared, right, in the second generation, while the yellow color remained in the second generation. So that stumped Mendel. So he did a second experiment which no one thought of. So all of the all the seeds turned out yellow, right? He did a second experiment that proved to be very interesting. This was really the groundbreaker. You know what he did? So all of the yellow seeds that were produced, he took one yellow seed to another yellow seed and planted it. Then it grew to adulthood. Then after that, it cross-fertilized, and then he harvested all of the peas from yellow and yellow. So imagine now, what do you think happens next? Okay, sorry, Megan, what did you say? Megan thinks mostly yellow, some green. Pure green. Okay, Simon says pure green. Why do you say pure green? Okay, that makes sense for some green, some yellow. Okay, that's a fair point. So, this was what he did. So, he planted the yellow ones and the green ones. And then after that, he harvested all of them. And then, something interesting happened. The first, okay, out of thousands that he harvested, a lot of them were yellow. Okay, is it overshot yet? 9:30. He got around 1, 2, 3 cups of yellow peas. And then the last cup turned out to be green peas. He did not believe what he saw because it was almost a very nice ratio of 3:1. Yeah, really. So he spent lots and lots of time doing this, collecting thousands and thousands of peas, opening them up. 3:1. Yellow is the green. And he found it really interesting because this didn't just happen once or twice. He repeated this many times because like a good scientist here repeats, right? So he did it over and over and over again. No matter how he did it, he always got a nice ratio of 3:1. But you only see this ratio if you do it into the thousands. If you harvest thousands and thousands of peas. If you just harvest 1 or 2 peas, you will not see this ratio. But it's always 3:1, which he found really fascinating. But that gave us a lot of insight into the idea of inheritance. That at the end of the day, when we inherit these kinds of traits from parents, there is some sort of a pattern to it. There is some laws that organisms follow. There is a pattern. I'd like to introduce just some terms to you today to start the chapter. Next week, when we come back, we will play a game. We will play a computer game, in fact. That's very fun. We will get you to meet pigeons. You like pigeons? I found this awesome game online. It's a computer game. It's called Pigeonetics. You really are, you just take 2 pigeons and then force them to mate. And then after that, you get 8. And then you see what the outcome will be. But today, we start off a little bit PG-13. We start with P's. I'd like to introduce some terms to you that you will encounter along the way next week. The first term I would like to introduce is the word recessive. Notice that between this generation and the next, one of the traits disappeared. Yeah? I would say therefore, green color is the recessive trait. Because it can actually disappear. Another word I'd like to introduce to you that will aid in your understanding next week, dominant. Notice that when you make the two together, you end up getting all yellow. That trait is a dominant trait. It seems to dominate at the end of the day, even though green was once present. You'll start to see a lot of these words appear next week. Recessive, dominant. The next step is what will help unlock your understanding of how we inherit traits. And it will help you understand even how to check, whether it makes sense, your own blood type, your parents' blood type. You can do a check. Just using simple genetics. Okay, the next thing I would like to introduce to you. Do you still remember the idea of alleles and genes? Okay, so let's bring up these words again. Genes. And that's why I asked you to go to cell division meiosis. What are genes? Genes are sequences of DNA that code for proteins, right? proteins could be of many sorts. These proteins could be a protein that determines color. It could be a protein that determines how tall you will grow. In other words, genes determine traits. If you have certain genes, you will end up producing certain proteins that will result in certain features you see on you. In fact, when I look at your eye color, it's because of certain pigments that are protein in nature that will produce as a result of certain genes you have. Yet, we realize that we can have different versions of the same gene. Do you remember I brought up the word alleles? Okay, which we took a while to understand. Alleles are different forms, different versions of the same gene. Now, why is this important? Because when you have different versions of the same gene, you could have different versions of the same protein, just slightly different. Give you an example. Let's say I have allele I have an allele that I'm going to write as big A, and I have another allele that is small a. So remember, we can use different alphabets to represent alleles. Different caps to represent alleles, or different alphabets to represent different genes. Each one of these alleles could code for a slightly different protein. Maybe this allele will code for a yellow color. Maybe this allele could code for a green color protein. And on the surface, it will result in the traits we see. We will see yellow color appear, green color appear. I'm just going to write a protein. At the end of the day, every gene codes for some sort of protein. Okay? This is the link I'd like to draw so that we can move on to the next chapter next week. You must have a good understanding of what genes and alleles are. Alleles are nothing more than different forms of the same gene. So, you and I, all of us here, have the gene for blood type. But our alleles could be slightly different. Your alleles could be slightly different such that you have blood type B. Mine results in blood type O. But it is still the same gene. Still following? Okay? Why is this important? It helps us understand the patterns that we saw through this key experiment. This next part will unlock a new understanding of biology. Remember that all of the chromosomes that you have come in pairs. That means in every one of you, you actually have a pair of the same gene. Right? Just that it could be of different alleles. So actually, when you look at Mendel's experiment, it makes a little bit more sense now. If we start off with a green parrot, and a yellow parrot. Actually, if we go down to the gene level, something like that. If we just make use of this again, A. Okay? Because every individual will come with a pair of the gene. Yeah? But if we make these two together, something interesting happens. Assuming, let's form sperm and egg first, or pollen grain and egg. And then we get them to fertilize. How many combinations of babies will you get? So 4 choose to me. You only have small a kind of egg or pollen grain, and then actually you only get one type of baby, right? You only get one type of baby, right? At the end of the day, you will only be able to get a baby that consists of A and small a. Understand? Yeah? If you grab something from this parent and you grab one thing from this parent, you end up getting a baby that is like that. Yeah? Yeah. So this is the outcome you will get. And remember we said that the baby and all of the offspring turned out yellow, right? Yeah. Then it starts to make a little bit more sense. Something I did not tell you long ago. In reality, when we write big A or small a, we are actually incorporating one more layer of thing. The idea of dominant, recessive. Yeah, this is something that I did not review to you long ago. If you were to see a big alphabet or small alphabet, one is actually more powerful than the other. In the presence of big A, which is responsible for yellow, actually yellow will show. And it will mask, the word is mask, it will mask the small a, such that the green color will not show. Okay? Now let's have a look at the second generation. What if I get a parent that is yellow, mate with another parent that is yellow, that contains these alleles? What are the kinds of offspring pairings you could get? Okay, let's write it out. So if I want to form the gametes, if we do the math behind this, right? If I do the math, what will it turn out? Okay, so I teach you a cheat way, and then after that it will make sense why his experiment always turn out the same way. This is a cheat way you could do. I could write it out this way, right? I'm going to write out all the possible ways that the alleles can come together, the new babies that can form. I can have a baby that is big A, big A, small a, big A, small a, and small a, small a. Suddenly, a lot of it makes sense on the surface right now. At the end of the day, we will end up getting around 3 times more babies that will be yellow in color because the dominant version of the allele is present. And then we will get this 1/4 of the babies will turn out green. Yeah? And suddenly a lot of it makes sense. Why he kept getting this 3:1 ratio? This is just an introduction into inheritance. How organisms can inherit alleles from parents. I'd like to give you a little guess. Okay, Ryan, that's a very fair point. What makes one allele more powerful than the other, that it will mask the other? Sometimes it has to do with enzymes. It could be that the protein being produced, the enzyme will carry out a certain reaction that will maybe override another reaction. It could be enzymes. That's just one example. Okay, so this was a quick introduction. But if you make sense of this, then we can, since we have a little bit of time, I can teach you how to make sense of your own blood type. Blood type is very fascinating. How many blood types are there? A, B, AB, and O. Let's try and make sense of all these blood types. In the human species, we have 3 kinds of alleles for blood type. So, the gene for blood type, actually we have a few alleles. So, allele 1, allele 2, allele 3. The alleles are written in this way very often if you look in textbooks. We have one allele for blood type O, we have another allele for blood type A, we have another allele for blood type B. Okay? And because every one of you have a pair of every allele, that results in different blood type combinations. So I'll show you the different blood types. Then you can solve some mysteries after that. For example, if you were to have two O's, your blood type will end up to be blood type O. If you have two A's, your blood type will end up blood type A. If you have two B's present, it will end up B. Okay, all these still make sense, huh? Okay. Between all three of them, actually some of them are dominant over another. That means some more powerful than the other. For example, if you were to have IA and IO together, actually you will get blood type A. O is actually recessive, whereas A and B are both equally powerful. If you were to have this combination in your cells, you will have blood type B. Yeah? Okay, then what other combination we have left? Okay, this is the last one, A and B. So I brought up the word dominant. But what if they are equally dominant? What if they are, the word is co-dominant? That means they both share equal placing of power. Actually, then you'll get blood type AB. What if I have on the right hand side are traits? Traits are your characteristics you see on the surface. Right? These are on the genetic level what you have. This is a very powerful tool to help to make sense whether genetically from child and parent, whether it makes sense or not. For example, let's say I have a parent that has blood type O, and then it mate with another parent of blood type AB. Actually, you are equipped now with the skills to find out what are the possible baby blood types there are. Can you? Can or not? Right? How will you do it? In a cheat way, So, what are the possible baby blood types you can possibly get? You can get a baby blood type A, you're a mosquito. Okay? You can get babies with blood type A. You can get babies with blood type B. Yeah? Yes, Ryan? Oh, okay. Ryan asked, shouldn't people with blood type O be very rare? Since you really need two O's, right, then you can become blood type O, right? But you see a lot of people with blood type O. Yeah. Because, right, okay, so actually this one is an interesting fact. We go back in time, right? Actually, evolution-wise, blood type O was the original blood type. So that was the original. Along the way, some of the blood type O alleles mutated into version A, version B. And so actually we still have a lot of people with O because there are still more of these alleles floating around in the human species race. Because that was the original one.
So like a few thousand years later.
A few thousand years later, we may very well get more A's or more B's. Yeah. Depending on how people make each other.
But like if you have a large enough sample size, then you actually
Correct? Okay, so this is just a quick introduction to the power of studying inheritance. Helps you understand how certain babies can form. You want to try a quick exercise? Wait, actually, you know, after I taught this, right? Then there was 1 year, one of the kids suddenly raised his hand. Then he said that I am blood type. What did he say? I think he said something along the lines of I am blood type AB. But then my parents are blood type O and AB. You think, Yeah, suddenly he raised up his hand, you know, in class. He was like, Mr. Tan, I am blood type AB, but my parents, one is blood type O, one is blood type AB. Yeah, I was like, So, guess what was my reply to him? How will you reply this child? Anyway, I told this child, I bet you that you got your parents' blood type wrong. So I say, we go out and call your parent now. Say, well, I'll call. Then I cross my fingers. Then after that, when you came back, right, you say, oh, sorry, Mr. I got blood type wrong. So, actually, his parents' blood type were, his parents' blood type were A and B. Okay? Can make sense, right? Yeah, it is possible. Okay, so that was just an introduction to LUs, genes, and patterns of inheritance. Next week, we will play with pigeons, and then we will learn how to draw diagrams so that you can solve mysteries. This chapter, I like this chapter because you do not need to memorize anything. All you have to do is that we will give you mysteries to solve, puzzles. We will tell you this parent is this parent is this. Can you solve and figure out what kind of babies were born? We have this baby, but can you solve a mystery of what kind of parents they were? Yes. Oh, okay. So good question. Your blood types may come with plus and minus, right? Okay. There's actually another layer of LUs at play. So I've shown you all the different blood types. It just solves or deals with the alphabet. But there are different LUs that deal with the plus or the minus. It's a different protein on the surface of the blood. Yeah? I give you an example of a mystery you can solve or that we could ask you. If I were to ask you, I want, if you find a baby with blood type, O, can you tell me what will be the blood type of the parents? What are the possible blood type of the parents? Is it only that? Okay, so mysteries to solve. Let's say you find a baby, and then this baby has blood type O. What do you think are the blood type of the parents? Can it only be O? Okay, so let's look up. Let's say mom is O, dad is O. Possible, right? This makes a lot of sense. Because on the genetic level, it's something like that. If I were to just take one of each, you will still end up with a baby with IO, right? Is this the only possible parent combination? Any other combination? Is this possible? Yeah? What if you have a parent that's blood type A and blood type B? Is it remotely possible for the child to have blood type O? Can, right? Can, right? Only if the parent, the blood type A, is this version of the LUs combination. And then maybe the father is this. Then what we end up with, you get, there's a chance you get a baby with AB, there's a chance you get a baby with blood type B, a chance of a baby of blood type A, then there's a very small chance you get a baby with blood type O. Still possible. Yeah? So it is a myth to say, right, that if your parents are blood type A, blood type B, right, then blood type O, right, then confirm you adopted or maybe, yeah, it is possible. Okay, so this was just a brief introduction. Next week, we'll work with more interesting examples, and then I'll teach you how to draw diagrams to solve mysteries. Okay? What is after this? Humanities. Okay, that's all I want to introduce for today. You can quickly go for a toilet break if you need to before your next lesson.